Yo, what's up guys, the Anime Titan here, back again with another What If, and today I will be doing What If Naruto Had All the Tailed Beasts, part 6, I think, not sure. But anyway, last time we left off, Naruto had told Sasuke about the Bijus, he had gotten knuckle knives from Asuma with Konohamaru getting jealous, he would have met Gaara, and they would have gone through the first stage of the tuning exams, as well as started the second. Naruto would also have gotten a kiss mark from Orochimaru, and when Hiruzen found out, he would have been royally pissed. Anyway, let's jump right back into where we left off. Hiruzen would have seen the curse mark and now would be yelling mentally at himself for being so stupid, so slow, not being able to protect his grandson. Hiruzen would get pissed and his chakra would flare. Out of nowhere, an entire team of Onbu would show up immediately. He would tell them to take Naruto and to find Jiraiya now. The Anbu wouldn't have hesitated, seeing as they heard the animosity in Hiruzen's voice, the anger. Hiruzen, after seeing this, he got his backbone back. There was no more slouch, no more push over Hiruzen. He wouldn't be taking things lightly anymore. He's had enough. Hiruzen would then look over at Sasuke and Sakura and tell them, head towards the tower. That's when Gaara would pop up and say, Lord Hokage-sama, I have something I must tell you. Hiruzen would look at the boy with a glare as he'd realize it's only just a small child, as he'd say, come with me then. Gaara and his team would follow the Gaara and his team would follow the Hokage swiftly to the tower, along with Sasuke and Sakura. When they'd arrive, the guards at the tower would immediately bow in respect to the Hokage, but he didn't. He seemed more pissed than usual. Hell, he seemed pissed. He didn't even seem pissed. He isn't usually pissed. This scared them. This made them realize that he truly is the god of shinobi. Hiruzen would have entered and the teams would have opened their scrolls with Iruka appearing for Sasuke and Sakura, and, well, Baki appearing for Team Suna. Gaara would then have told Baki that he should take Kankuro and Tamaru for the time being. He has to speak to Hokage about something that happened during the Forest Death. Baki would be a little, well, hesitant and scared at this, but he would nod, knowing that he can't interfere in matters outside their village. The Hokage would then take Gaara to his office, as when they'd arrive, Gaara would start explaining everything about the attack and how and who planned it. Hiruzen would have been even more pissed now, hearing that they planned to attack Konoha. Gaara would then say that he's truly sorry. He didn't want to do this, especially after Naruto had helped him. But he didn't really have a choice. It was his father. He made all the decisions, and Gaara and I just had to follow. Hiruzen would nod, saying that he wouldn't be punished, but he'd have to return back to his team now. He didn't want to keep them waiting any longer. Gaara would nod and then leave. This is when, out of nowhere, he'd hear a knock on his window. Jiraiya would step through and say, "Hey, old man, how you doing?" That's when, out of nowhere, Hiruzen would look at Jiraiya with a glare, telling him that he needs to be professional now. Jiraiya would see this glare as he'd straighten up immediately, saying, "Hi, Hokage-sama. I have returned to the village." Hiruzen would then go on to explain what the hell Orochimaru had done to Naruto. This would have infuriated Jiraiya to the point where he wanted to rip Orochimaru's head off. And he was planning to. He would have then asked Hiruzen where he is now, as Hiruzen would say he had him sent to the Konoha Special Hospital Ward. He was planning on going there now anyways. Jiraiya would then join him as they'd head to the hospital ward and see that Naruto was doing fine, except the fact that his muscle tendons were torn and he had bruises everywhere. This not being from Orochimaru, but the massive strain of chakra that he got from all 9 the Biju. The Biju chakra would be flowing his system, healing him, strengthening his muscles, strengthening his bones, everything. Jiraiya would then sit at the side of Naruto's bed as he regretted ever leaving the Hidden Leaf. Jiraiya would have been pissed that he ever left the village now, ever left his godchild behind. He swore that he'd kill Orochimaru there and then. So let's go ahead and time skip about 2 hours. Naruto would have finally woken up after he had been asleep for over 3 hours. He would have opened his eyes and found himself in the hospital room with Hiruzen standing there. Hiruzen would have smiled, asking Naruto if he's okay. Naruto would have nodded as he'd say, "Just fine, old man." He would have then hopped out of the bed as he'd see a white-haired man sitting in the windowsill. He'd ask, "Who's that old guy?" Hiruzen would then say, "That's my student, Jiraiya." Naruto would look at him and say, "So, he's friends with Orochimaru?" Jiraiya's eyes would snap directly at Naruto at this as he'd say, "Friends with that snake bastard? Never on your life!" Naruto would have taken a step back in fear as he would have said, Sorry, I didn't mean it that way." Jiraiya's eyes would then soften, realizing that Naruto was still actually a kid, as he'd say, It's fine. I'm just really pissed at him right now." Naruto would then ask, "Why? What did he do?" As Hiruzen would then explain that, "Naruto, Orochimaru bit you, right?" Naruto would then nod, saying, "Yeah, and it hurt a lot. It hurt here in my right shoulder." Hiruzen would then take out a mirror, remove a mirror from the wall, as he'd show Naruto the curse mark. Naruto would ask, "What's this? Did I get a tattoo?" Hiruzen would chuckle slightly as he'd say, "Not quite, Naruto. This is a curse mark." Naruto would ask, "A curse mark? Am I cursed?" "No!" Hiruzen would then chuckle again, saying, "No, Naruto, you're not cursed. This is a Fuin technique that Orochimaru uses to ensure that people would seek more power. It's also a technique that he uses to take over others' bodies." Naruto's eyes would widen at this as he'd say, "Orochimaru's gonna take over my body?" Hiruzen would then step in saying, "No, I'm not gonna allow that, Naruto. I will kill him, I swear." Hiruzen would then have been... His temper would have risen after saying that. Jiraiya would then step in saying, "We'll both make sure that bastard never makes it out alive." Naruto would nod and ask, "Did Sasuke and Sakura make it to the tower? Did we pass?" Hiruzen would chuckle slightly and say, "Yes, Naruto. You have about 2 more days to rest before the actual third round would start." Naruto would nod his head as he'd say, "Okay, GG." He'd then go back to sleep. We then changed perspectives to that of Sasuke and Sakura. Sasuke would have been worried. His friend, his teammate, Naruto, would have been injured severely. He would have also been afraid. Naruto had shown a really animalistic, vicious fighting style, which him and Sakura had never seen before. It's like Naruto was a beast altogether. Not just one though, multiple. All that was on his mind at that point was ripping Orochimaru apart. That's what it felt like. Sasuke shivered at the mere thought of that again. Sakura was sitting on the bed, wondering if Naruto was okay. I mean, he's so strong. He's one of the most powerful shinobi she knows, besides Kakashi Sensei, and he was taken down with a single bite? That's impossible. Is this Orochimaru guy really that strong? She then remembered Naruto's sudden outburst of pure power, the 9 different tails on his back, all varying in color and shape. She would have wondered what the hell that was, and why it felt so angry, so malicious. Its only intent was to kill. She'd barely been able to remain conscious when that power erupted from Naruto. The mere bloodlust that was pouring off of that thing was scary. We changed perspective once more. This time to Gaara. Gaara was sitting on his bed, looking worried for his friend. He didn't know why, but he felt responsible for this, as if it was his fault. Like, if he wasn't so weak, or if he hadn't been here, maybe Orochimaru would have left Naruto alone. Deep down, he knew that wasn't true, but he couldn't help but think that. If only he was stronger, maybe he could have helped Naruto in the fight. Tamari would have seen her brother's peril as she'd walk up to him and ask, "What's wrong?" Garo would then look up with a tear falling down his cheek. Tamari hadn't seen this. This is something that was new to her. She then immediately hugged Gara, knowing that he must have been in tremendous pain, seeing as she'd never seen him cry before. Gara would then let out small and soft sobs after being embraced by Tamari. Tamari knew that Naruto must have been a big part of Gaara's life for that to happen. He hadn't even cried when he thought that his siblings went missing. But Naruto, a new stranger, had immediately gotten into Gaara's heart in a way that even his siblings didn't. Okay, so we swap back to Jiraiya, who had just left the hospital. Jiraiya was now fuming. He didn't even feel to go perv on women. The only thing that was on his mind was finding and killing Orochimaru. He didn't care if it meant losing his life. Orochimaru stepped to his godson, and he was gonna pay for that. He'd gone off into the forest as he'd walked over to Mount Pato. Well, he'd reverse summoned himself to Mount Miyoboku. Jiraiya would have reverse summoned himself straight back to Mount Miyoboku. He really was pissed, and he decided that he'd spend the next 2 days trying to master his Sage Mode so that he could end Orochimaru. Jiraiya would immediately jump back into his Sage Mode training for the next 2 days. Naruto would have been out of the hospital by the second day, and he would not have really cared. Hang on, guys, my brother's having a pee-pee dance in the corner. Naruto would have been out by the second day. He would have gone back to the tower where Sasuke and Sakura were. As soon as he saw them, he'd run up to them and say hi, but Sasuke and Sakura would be a little fearful. Sasuke would be the first to break the tension. "What was that?" Sasuke asked. "What do you mean, Sasuke?" Naruto replied. That form, Naruto, you had 9 tails swirling all around you. It wasn't the regular red bubbly aura, though. It was different. It was 9 different tails. You were animalistic, and all you wanted was to kill. What was that?" Naruto would then look at Sasuke as he'd say, I don't know what you're talking about, Sasuke. All I remember is getting bit by Orochimaru and then falling unconscious. Sasuke would then think that it probably had something to do with his Biju, as he'd say, Would you ask them, please?" Naruto would then nod as he'd quickly take a step to his mindscape as he'd ask, "What happened?" The Biju would then look at Naruto as they say, well, as Matatabi would say, "Well, kitten, you see, we kind of stepped in after you lost consciousness. We were all tired and pissed of having that man hurt you, so we took control of the body and decided that we'd all funnel chakra through it to stop him, no matter the cost." Naruto would then say, "Okay, but why are my friends so scared then?" Matatabi would then say that, well, you see, all 9 of us were working at the same time, which probably meant a large amount of bloodlust and a large amount of malice and killing intent was flooding, as well as aggressive chakra, seeing as all of us were angry at that time. All of us wanted to rip him to shreds. "I'm really sorry, kitten. We didn't mean to scare your friends like that." Naruto would then nod as he'd say, "Don't worry. Thanks anyways." He'd then step out of his mindscape. Editor's note: if you're wondering why Kitten Matatabi will be treating Naruto as a child at some point, basically she'd treat him like a child, like her child, or a friend at times. Whenever something's wrong with Naruto, she will take up the motherly role, along with, I think, Kokuo and Chome. Those 3 will take up the motherly roles, but when they're all having fun, she'll treat Naruto like a brother. Either a little or a big brother, all depending on the situation. Back into it. Naruto would then tell Sasuke that they all reacted. Sasuke would not, but Sakura would still be confused, asking, "Who's they? What is that? What was that, Naruto?" Naruto would then tell Sakura that, "I'll tell you in just a little bit, but let's first get something to eat. I'm actually still a little hungry after getting out of the hospital." So Naruto would go and have lunch, and he'd see Gaara, Tamari, and Kankuro. The three would have walked over to Naruto as they'd ask if he was doing okay. Naruto would have nodded as he'd say, "Can't really control my chakra all too well, but hey, what are you gonna do? Large chakra reserves means a large amount of control." Gaara would have felt even worse at this, seeing that Naruto couldn't even use his chakra properly now. He'd look down as Naruto would say, "Hey, what's wrong, Gaara?" Gaara would look up with a tear falling down his cheek yet again as he'd say, "I'm sorry, Naruto, it's 'cause of me." Naruto would then shake his head saying, "No, it's not you, Gaara. I was afraid. I mean, he's the guy that experimented on me all those years back, so I guess I haven't completely gotten over the fact that, well, he's still out there, so I kind of froze up and I was scared in the battle. I probably could have won if I used everything to the maximum of their capabilities, but I didn't, so yeah." Tamari and Konkuro's and Gaara's eyes would have widened, hearing that that's the man that experimented on Naruto. Now they felt even worse. They were allied with the man, wanting to destroy the leaf, and now they hearing that man's the man that experimented on Naruto, the one that caused him so much pain. Naruto would then chuckle, saying, "But that doesn't matter now. I'm almost back at 100%, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'll see you guys later," as Naruto would leave his half-finished plate on the table and head off to the room. Sakura and Sasuke would have finished their plates as they would realize that Naruto's probably really, really in a bad state at the moment, seeing as he didn't even finish his plate. He left half of it there, which should have never happened. I mean, Naruto can down an entire 6 bowls of ramen and still have 90% space in his stomach left. I mean, shonen men protagonists, what are you gonna do? They eat a hell of a lot. But anyway, the two would have finished their plates as they would have head over back to their room, where they would find Naruto sitting on the floor meditating. Naruto would then open his eyes as if he knew they were there, as he'd tell Sakura to come sit down, and Sasuke as well. Sasuke would sit next to Naruto on his left side and Sakura on his right, as Naruto would hold out his hands. Naruto would say that they're gonna have to use a different method this time, seeing as it's more than one person. Sasuke would nod as he'd take Naruto's hand, and so would Sakura. Then Sasuke and Sakura would link hands as well, all three of them sitting in a triangular formation holding hands. Naruto would then close his eyes as all three of them would be drawn into the mindscape. Kurama would be Sasuke's Kurama would be sitting in the middle of the Uchiha compound with Naruto's 9 Biju all sitting in a row. Sakura would have been scared for her life right now, as she'd known that she'd been told that the Nine Tails was killed. Naruto would then tell Sakura that, "Hey, Sakura, this is what you felt the other day. These are the 9 Biju. Well, my 9 Biju." Sakura would then look at Sasuke and ask why there's one behind him. Sasuke would then say, "Well, I'm the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki." Naruto would then tell Sakura that, "Okay, Sakura, what do you know about the Kyuubi, no Kitsune?" Sakura would say that it was killed about 13 years ago. Naruto would then chuckle slightly, saying, "Not quite, Sakura. You see, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and all the other Biju for that fact, are just large amounts of chakra that were given sentience, meaning they understand, they learn, they breathe, they think, they love, just like humans. Only they live forever because they're all made out of chakra. And you can't destroy chakra, you can only relocate it, and then you can't kill the Biju, you can only seal it." Sakura would then realize and ask, "So the fourth didn't kill it, but sealed it in you and Sasuke?" Naruto would then shake his head no, saying, no, um, the fourth seal didn't Sasuke due to because of Sasuke's father asking. I got mine a different way. Sakura then asked, what do you mean? How did you get it a different way? All the tailed beasts would then, all the tailed beasts behind Naruto would then flare up in anger as they would think about that day. As Naruto would turn around, telling them, "Calm down. It's fine. She's my teammate. She deserves to know. Both of them deserve to know." Naruto would then say that when he was 4, he was running around when these men wearing masks, no paint on them, had kidnapped him. When he'd woke up, he found himself in a lab with a bunch of other kids. He'd been stuck in the lab for over 2 months, and every single day of that 2 months, he'd been tortured and experimented on. Eventually, at the end of the 2 months, Orochimaru had finished what he was planning. He had resurrected all 9 of the Biju by gathering small amounts of their chakra samples and then having a machine that would feed them chakra from some of the kids that hadn't survived. The chakra from the beasts would eventually then evolve and become the Biju themselves. Really small, but Biju nonetheless. Orochimaru had then tried to seal them within me, but the Biju's power were too much, so the seal didn't work properly. But I still got the Biju nonetheless, and they're my friends ever since. But anyway, the Biju had then immediately enveloped me in in a cloak, similar to what you had seen, and I ended up killing a large amount of the people there. Except Orochimaru, he got away. Sakura would have been in tears by now, and Sasuke would have his Sharingan would have been spinning fiercely. He would have been pissed hearing that Naruto was treated that way, and that he was burdened with something that he didn't even want. He was tortured, for Christ's sake. Sasuke was now pissed, and he swore that he'd kill Orochimaru. Naruto would then smile and say, "Thanks, Sasuke, but it really doesn't matter. We just need to finish this Chunin exams and become Chunin. I'm still gonna become Hokage. And Sasuke, don't slack off either, okay? I want a strong rival. Sakura, I'm counting on you to get stronger as well. I can't always fight everything on my own." Sakura and Sasuke would then nod as they would be sent out of the mindscape. Naruto would then tell them that he needs to go do some training and that he'll be back later. Sasuke and Sakura would nod as Naruto would leave the room. He'd then head for the training ground. He'd then start working on his body once more, push-ups, sit-ups, striking the trees, and working on his taijutsu altogether. By the time that all the teams had arrived... Hang on. So basically, let's jump into the actual preliminaries. Every fight will go as in canon, with a difference here. Naruto would go up against Kiba. Sasuke's chakra control wouldn't be screwed with, so he'd be doing just fine, 110%. But this is something that will change. Hang on, guys. So let's jump into Naruto's fight. Due to the curse mark, Naruto's chakra control has gone to shit. Meaning he can't even properly execute a shadow clone. So it's going to be a lot harder for him in this one. Naruto would be running up to Kiba with his pure taijutsu, seeing as he's pretty good at taijutsu. And Kiba would be wary, knowing that Naruto is a, well-rounded expert. Naruto would then charge at Kiba as he'd unleash a fierce barrage of taijutsu. Sasuke would wonder why Naruto hasn't used his clones yet, but he wouldn't question it, thinking that Naruto probably has a plan. Naruto would continue going through hand signs more and more. Not hand signs, sorry. Continue pushing Kiba with taijutsu more and more, with kicks, punches, but Kiba would be able to block them quite decently. The only thing that Naruto can use at this point effectively is his sand defense, seeing as it's not him that's controlling it with his chakra, it's Shikaku that's controlling it. So anyway, Naruto would keep pushing Kiba back and back, but that's when Kiba would do a triple backflip. He'd then use the man-beast transformation, as he'd charge at Naruto with a double fang over fang. Naruto would quickly back away, and that's when it would happen. the sand defense would rise and protect him. Naruto would wonder what the hell was going on, as he'd hear a voice in his head saying, "Don't worry, kid, I've got your back." Naruto would be eternally grateful that Shikaku still got his back, and he would charge at Kiba yet again with taijutsu. Everybody would wonder what's going on up until Kiba does it. He breaks through the sand defense, and he gets Naruto with a fang over fang, completely tearing his shirt. That's when it would show, the curse mark. The proctors would see it, and as well, the proctors would see it, the Jonin senseis would see it, and Anko would see it as well. She'd know that Orochimaru must be here in Konoha, seeing as she'd heard about Naruto's experiments, but she had inspected him once or twice before, but hadn't found any curse mark, so she knows he's in Konoha. Kiba would ask if Naruto got a tattoo, and Naruto would say, "Oh, this? Nah, it's nothing special, Kiba, don't worry about it." Naruto would then flash through some hand signs as he'd use a jutsu, this being the sand-style sand bullet jutsu. He chewed it, but instead of this time, him not being able to use it properly, the sand bullets, well, every time he uses chakra, it would inflict a large amount of pain on Naruto. Naruto would use the technique as he'd fall to a knee due to the pain caused by the curse mark. As the sand bullets would hit Kiba, he'd end up falling backwards and hitting the wall, but he'd get up again saying, "Wow, Naruto, that's a powerful jutsu you got there." Naruto would be in agony as he'd be down on the floor on one knee. He'd then slowly rise back up again, wobbling. Kiba would ask, "What the hell's up with you, Naruto? You'd be able to do in the academy, you did jutsu like this, like it was nothing." Naruto would then say, "Just a little bit of a problem with my chakra network, Kiba." Kiba would then say, "Alright, it's okay, man, I understand." As he'd charge in once more, Naruto would then flash through another set of hand signs as he'd use the blue fireball. This would cause Naruto even more pain as he'd fall straight to the ground, barely keeping himself up with his arms. The fireball would explode, knocking Kiba into the wall, this time knocking him out cold. Naruto would be mentally yelling in pain as the curse mark would have affected him. Sasuke would realize that Naruto must be in excruciating agony, seeing as he was now clutching his right shoulder. Naruto would have slowly moved towards the stairs as Ibiki, well, not Ibiki, what's his name? Can't remember his name. Was it Hayate? Hayate Gecko? I think it was Hayate, but anyway, Hayate would announce Naruto the winner. Naruto would be walking up the stairs as he'd make it back to the qualifying participants. Sasuke would look at Naruto and ask if he's okay, as Naruto would give him a weak smile and nod, saying, "Just fine, Sasuke." Sasuke would look at Naruto and see that he must be in excruciating pain. Hinata would then walk up and ask if everything was okay, and Naruto would say, "Just fine, Hina-chan," as he'd flash a weak smile too. Hinata wouldn't believe it as she'd activate her Byakugan and look at Naruto's chakra network. She'd see that the tattoo on his shoulder was drawing in was pumping in a malicing chakra. She'd then ask him if he knew that there was a malice chakra, a menacing chakra being pumped into his system. Naruto would ask, "What do you mean, Hina-chan?" "Nothing's wrong here, it's just all misunderstanding." Hinata would then shake her head, saying that no, she knows chakra when she sees it, and whatever that is on his shoulder, it's causing a lot of problems with his original chakra network. Naruto would then say, "It's nothing, Hinata. Just prepare for your match." Hinata would not really want to, but she'd begrudgingly leave and go prepare for her match. That's when Anko would walk in through the qualifiers doors as she'd tell Naruto to get up and follow her. Naruto, knowing she's a Jonin, wouldn't hesitate as he'd quickly get out of his chair and follow her, stumbling a little bit because of the pain still reeling through his body. Anko would then make it to a room where she'd have Naruto enter. Naruto would enter and Anko would ask him where the hell he got that. Naruto would say it happened during the Forest of Death. Orochimaru bit him. She'd ask him why Orochimaru bit him specifically, as Naruto would say
he came back for what he made. Uncle would be confused as she'd ask, "What the hell do you mean, Brett?" Naruto would then tell her about the experiments. Uncle's eyes would widen and she'd be even more disgusted by her previous master. And this is where I'll be ending it off. Stay tuned and join in next time. Anime Titan signing out. Peace.